All right, so follow me to my second video of the lecture. All right. So we are seeing the second paper of this semester. No, sorry. Second paper of this class. All right, so why adolescence, which is the 청소년기, as a second critical window? So based on the biological traits and the puberty, which is 사춘기, so neuroendocrine, like reorganization, because I'm the biology later, so it's hard to pronunciation. All right, so risk behavior, vulnerability, addiction proneness, which is the weak to the addiction. In Korean, the 중독에 취약하다. So addiction proneness increase and the reward brain develops, self-control brain lacks. So in these days, there are many debates about using the smartphone. These are not very the damageful for their brain in the adult period of time, but these are all related with those biological traits. Psychosocial, the peer pressure peaks and the identity formation, which is the autonomy pursuit, which is a parent relationship. I mean, between their parents and their relationship that will make the transformation. And then the risks of the depression and anxiety risks are very high at that point in time. So these are very common story we heard a lot, right? And there are also school. They're saying the school, the peer relationship, the teacher relationship, they are critical. And there are many of the structural situation, high school transition, and the college enter competition. Oh, that will impact on the on negative on the adverse effects and the health behavior patterns form. So these are the main parts of the background. So school environments health impact the academic stress and the peer relationship, school health services, and out of the school use. So these are not one-to-one relevant and on the parallel with the Korean context, but these are very hard types of the situation we can apply. So in Korea, this is the national level and the global level, and the test is very high. So they have the very high scores, but their mental health conditions are not very good because with stress and high pressure, they sleep less and they have the fatigue, which is the pill, and there are the less levels of the immunity, the immune system, and they are very weak to the infection, the 감염. So these are the problems we can see. And in their school, on the life, the bully experiences like a 학폭, they will increase the depression, suicidal thoughts that will lead to the positive relationship or negative relationship on that. So compared with the bully experiences, the better and positive relations they will buffer the stress buffer, which means it does not mean that it will make the stress bigger. The buffer means there are some gap. No, I mean there is some kind of a 여유. So if they have the better relationship, they will have the 여유 in the gap between the stressful events and their mental health. So they will keep and they will secure their mental health condition from those adverse events. And school health services, the school nurse, and the counselor roles. So I attended those schools too long time ago, but I don't remember we had the counselor at that point in time. But in these days, there are some regulations there are some counselors, but the problem is there are the lackeys of the specialist. So did you see some counselor in your school still, back in your high school period of time or middle school period of time? Oh, not sure about that. The physical activity time insufficient. So my daughters, they complain a lot about that because they had back in the United States, they had a very plenty of the outdoor activities like a recess time, but they complained a lot, and actually they surprised a lot when they arrived to South Korea because there were no outdoor activities throughout the week, and that was not very common. And out of the school use, the dropout and non-enrollees, so these are very rare. But in that case, if that happens, that's very huge, the risk factor of the health condition. So in South Korea, it has the OECD first suicide rate and leading cause of the deaths, which is the 사망 원인 within the early period of time. That's the number one, the cause of the death, and they have the insufficient, very insufficient, and the sleep time. So that's very huge risk factor of the health condition of the adults, I don't know, the adolescence period time. So the education. So education is usually, so the intention of the education is the keeping the early period as the preparation period. But in these days, not only happening in South Korea, but these are working as a sorting out process. The sorting out is the nanuda. Sorting out is the relocation of the people into that they are very good position. They are in the like a middle position, and they are in the very least levels of the good condition. So I remember you guys were in the 고등급제, a nine class or nine group system in your GPA system or in your nation. But in these days, in maybe from this year, there are just five group system. I mean, 5등급 system. The five grade, it doesn't, I feel like a very good translation. But anyway, they are the Odinga system, which is the chaotic situation for the school because um anyway they collapse those categories, so which means that they were in the borderline and they will have the very trouble. So the in Korea anyway, in the Korean context, that's very big problem we can see. All right, so can education system reform the school, the save adolescent health condition? In Korean context, in the contemporary 2026, maybe not. But anyway, the entrance exam pressure and the mental health condition. So these are what are the changes of the structural conditions and the individual level choices. These are possibly the main factors. So Dream start to use care programs. Do they reach adolescent second window adequately, which is appropriately, 적절하게, and then the out of school use, how to include them in the school health protection. Because the school dropouts, because the like a 자퇴 or the 퇴학생, these are very rare conditions in South Korea, but still happening. So they are out of the scope of the policies. That's why. All right, so this is the on the based on the UK, the UN data. So they are based on the global context. So there are the three life course mechanisms operated: latent effects and the pathway effects and the cumulative effects. So the key outcomes would be the adolescence is just a contested period. They try to find that the puberty, the brain maturation, and role selection can redirect the childhood trajectories for better or the worse. So we are saying that anyway, so not only focusing on the biological condition in their early time, lifetime, like infancy, 유아기, or the fetus time, like in the womb, 자궁 안에 있을 때. So there are many types of the effect accumulated over the life course period time. All right, so third paper, which is the last paper of the lecture this week. So childhood disadvantage and the health problems in the middle and the later life. All right. So based on the a survey, which is the Midas, the midlife development of the United States, they followed up. So they followed the count of the 31 self-reported physician diagnosed conditions at the wave number one, plus new conditions emerging at wave number two. So there are three domains of the childhood advantages, like childhood, socioeconomic condition, financial strain, the welfare receipt, family composition, no male in the childhood in the household, parental divorce, and the parental death before 16, and the parental abuse. So these are sort of like a negative events, as we saw the ACE, the adverse childhood events. And if they had these types of the negative events in their early part of the lifetime, so they try to see that. So anchored in the cumulative inequality theory, right? Cumulative inequality theory instead of the biological traits and the pathway model, but saying that childhood is the pivotal, which is the very significant, very important, because early differences shape both future risk exposure and access to the coping resources. That's why. So this is the very important part of the lecture. So we repeat it again and again. So there are the four key findings and direct imprints. The frequent physical and emotional parental abuse in early life stages. So that will significantly increase the more life health problems at the waypoint number one. The waypoint number one is the early stage of the life, and then the new conditions in the waypoint number two are far later in their life stages. And pathway-mediated childhood advantage acts indirectly through smoking, obesity, financial strain, lower personal control, and weaker family support, and high family strain. So the reason why, so what are the mechanisms and the pathways of the low and the worse health condition in their later life stages? So these are happened because of the through on those conditions of the life. So these are the mediation process. And there are no gender, race moderation, so there were very not specific differentials of the height jumps and differences by gender and the races. So throughout the gender and throughout the races, the mechanisms and the broad and not group specific. So there was very interesting finding as well. And if I expand the 12 of the pros for specific conditions and the six ICD chapters are these are like a disease conditions. These are associated with that. So what are the direct and the mediated effects? So the direct, which is the biological, so they are also mediated in the social conditions. So that will implies the critical period, the direct one, and there's also the pathway, the mediated one, which is indirect effect. So early adversity, permanent neural, endocrine, and epigenetic, and the HPA axis change, which is the stress vulnerability and the aging. Then it's hard to fully reverse. It explains the residual childhood SES effect after controlling the SES program. And if we try to only focusing on, or if we overemphasize this one, the overstate as a biological destiny, most effects are not partial, not mixed one. And in other words, in the other part, childhood SES condition, and they will impact on the education level, that will impact on the job in the income, healthcare, and the behavior and environments. So these are impacting the adult interventions, and then we can go see that. We can go and look through what are the later life impacts on that. So other health inequality statistics in that 8 through 12 years of the life expectancy gap based on the education. So those who are more educated, they are more likely to live longer. So there's very big differences. And 1.8 times more the chronic disease prevalence. So if they have the low socioeconomic status, so compared with the high socioeconomic status people, they have the likelihood of more chance to have the chronic disease, which are the 성인병 in Korea. 30% as the childhood poverty tracking to adult poverty probability, which means if they were, oh, sorry about that. If they started their life in the poor condition, there were very, very high prevalence of the likelihood of they are staying in the poor condition as well. All right. So let me skip that and cumulative inequality theory in that. So cumulative inequality theory. Okay, so this is the main theory we are seeing that. All right, so the pathway is the direct biological imprint. Yeah, that had impact because the early life of the conditions, like a period, the critical period, so that would that was the very impactful, and also the evidence for the cumulative exposure model as well. And then pathway effect also matter, which means the link runs the smoking, obesity, finance strain, weaken the family support, and lower the personal control. So based on that, the pathway means they are in the transition, the health condition or the life conditions in the transition period of time, they can change the pathway, but based on the prevalence of the dose, the health negative and the life negative conditions that would change the outcomes in their health conditions as well. All right. So on the main part, the accumulation itself needs unpacking, distinguishing reversible states and for the irreversible events like parental degree. So rate of the time in accumulation. So actually these parts were covered in the on the lecture last week. So maybe Yeah, I highly recommend to come back to the lecture last week. All right, so policy implication, the early intervention programs like course intervention as well. So in many countries, like a Head Start in the USA, Sure Start in the UK, Paris Schools in the USA, and the Dream Start in Korea. So these are types of the intervention because we learned that the early life stage events that will impact on the late life as well. So we are seeing that. So there are the cost effectiveness as well, so which means that ROI is steeply in the age graded. So in early life stages, there are more impacts and there are less impact in in the later lifehood. But this is very debatable because we are not sure. We cannot count on that in the calculation. All right, so these are some types of the intervention window, why the reason why the pregnancy time is the very important, and in fact the expected events are the birth weight increases, and there are the neurodevelopments, and cost effectiveness is very high. But if there are the interventions, the early life stages, there are the loss and the cost and effect, the effect efficiency. There are many of the problems as well. All right, so. These are the main parts of the lecture. So these are some of the additional findings and the summary. But the key takeaways, the cumulative, the disadvantages compounds like the compound effect. So accumulated events of the there are the accumulation of the negative and the advantage of the events. And there are two windows as a childhood only and the adult period time as a very critical events in the critical period time. And there are the partly reversible, but not always very majorly reversible because it's happening in very early life stages, but there are very huge impacts. So so I cannot say it's not available or it's not possible, but there are the less likelihood of the reversing the early life disadvantages as well. All right, so there are the key vocabularies that these might be helpful for your future study, but they will be coming in from the lecture last week. All right, so thank you very much for your attention, and see you in the lecture tomorrow. I mean the lecture in the lecture time. Thank you very much.